Okay, point number 3 here is it is true that the Jewish people would bring on the holiday of Sukkot, the tabernacle holiday, they would bring 70 bulls to the temple in order to sacrifice them for the nations of the world. However, if you notice the order of the amount of bulls, the amount goes down. It's declining every day. And our sages tell us a following message. What is that coming to teach us? It's coming to teach us that though the Jewish people, it is true that we come to pray for the nations of the world, yet we see that the order goes down. The order is going down from 13, 12, 11, 10. We're going downhill here. Why? This shows that as the history progresses, the nations of the world, will be slowly eliminated, will be slowly gone. And that's what the Torah is teaching us. So it is true. The Talmud does tell us that if the nations of the world understood what benefit the temple has for them, they would have protected it with soldiers and tanks and missiles and planes if they knew. But the Torah is also teaching us what is the reality. And you got to step into the reality. The reality is that they're on a decline. This shows that it's just a matter of time. As history goes on and progresses, the nations of the world will be eliminated, and the nation of Israel will then rise to the top. And we see already today, we see the first great signs of this. What's happening today with the power of Israel, the power of the Jewish people in the land of Israel. A tremendous change about, tremendous leaders in so many, in spirituality, in yeshivot, the learning halls that we have, as far as how many people have come back to the religion, as far as agriculture is concerned, as far as technology is concerned. You see Israel rising as a superpower, and we see the nations of the world going and regressing, decreasing. Their strength is becoming, if you look closely, you will see the strength is deteriorating. This is the sign of the times. Okay, so the last 2 points I wanted to show about separation at the time of the holiday of Sukkot is we have various laws. Number 1 law is the following. This is brought down in many places. I will just mention 2. This is brought down in the Code of Jewish Law called Kaf HaChaim. It's brought down in chapter 639, paragraph 6. It says the following, and this is, I'm reading it now, not from that book, I'm reading it from a different book by Rav Chaim Falaji. He has a book called Moed L'Kol Chai, it's on page 260. Listen closely. Amazing how if you tell a lie enough times, people will begin to believe it. So we have Jews, sometimes even rabbis and Gentiles telling us how the holiday of Sukkot represents the coming together of the Jewish people and the Christian world or whatever. Listen closely. It says the following in the halacha: when a person is sitting in the tabernacle, in the booths, in the sukkah, they must be sitting with the fear of heaven and modestly. And they should make sure that a non-Jew should not step in the sukkah. Why? Because if a non-Jew steps inside a sukkah, the holiness runs away, disappears from that person's sukkah. But not only that, we're not finished here. We got the last hit, we got the last home run here. It's not only that. And the 7 guests, the 7 holy guests, every day in Sukkah, in the holiday of Sukkot, there's another special guest: Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Aaron, Joseph, and David. These 7 righteous guests that we have in our holy Sukkah, they curse such a person. They curse such a person that brings into their sukkah a non-Jew. Very interesting holiday of unity. Next we see, also brought down in Rav Chaim Falagi's book, Moed L'Kol Chai. This time we're on page 271. It says the following: a person should be very, very careful not to build a sukkah with the help of a non-Jew. Not even to build, but especially not the finish, the palm trees that we put on top of the green palm trees that we put on the top. Person should definitely, if you have no choice, you could build the walls, you could have a Gentile build the walls, but definitely do not have a Gentile put up the palm branches on top. So we see once again a very interesting holiday of unity where we're not allowed to invite inside our sukkah and to build it. So we have a tremendous wall of separation between. So we see once again that Jacob, the forefather of the Jewish nation, Esau, the forebearer of the Gentile nation, they both were buried on Sukkot, and we see that there's still, even though they were buried on the same day, and they, so to speak, died on the same day, we see once again the holiday represents more than any other holiday the separation between the Jewish people and the non-Jewish world, or the Jewish righteous people and the righteous of the world, nations, and the wicked. Okay, now a verse that a lot of people like flying in your face is a verse that's in the prophet Tzfania. Not sure exactly how they pronounce that in English, but Tzfania, and it's in chapter 3, verse 9. It says that there will come a certain day where God will turn all the languages of the world into one language, and shoulder to shoulder the nations will be together with the Jewish people. This seems very straight, clear, in your face, that at some time there's going to be a reunion between the nations of the world and the Jewish people. So always it's important to look at the context, because the Christians are experts at taking a verse and taking it out of context and trying to bring proofs. I mean, they're like experts at it. Not easy, it's not an easy occupation, but they do it very well. So if you look at all the commentators, okay, I didn't say some, all, whoever you want, every one of the commentators said, look at the whole chapter. I took out one verse that talks about the unification. But you have to look at the entire chapter. What's the chapter talking about? And when you look at the chapter, you get an entirely different picture here. You get a picture here of the Gentiles, the wicked Gentiles, being destroyed. Now, when we're talking about wicked, I must remind those out here. We're not talking about a guy, that's going around and he has like a switchblade under his, in his shoe, like bad Leroy Brown. He's the baddest guy. He got a switchblade or something in his shoe, razor in his shoe. Yeah. Okay, we're not talking about people that are running around with blood in their thing. We have to understand, if a non-Jew does not observe the 7 commandments of Noah, or the 70 commandments that are in the Bible, they are wicked people. They could be the biggest smile, and they could bring in, they could give money to Goodwill and give their clothes, used clothes, to whatever organizations, and give charity. They could do all that. If they are worshiping idols, if they are inventing new religions, they are wicked people with a nice smile, white bright smile. They seem on the outside to be very, very nice kind of people, but the Torah teaches us that they are wicked. Just like if a Jew Don't think this is just one-sided here. If a Jew observes hundreds of commandments but does not believe in the 13 principles, he's in the bleachers. He's actually he's not even in the bleachers, because if you're in the bleachers, you're still on the feet, you're still in the game. This is in the parking lot. You know, in the parking lot, you're not part of the game. You're in the parking lot over there. So it's the same thing for a Jew. You could observe all the commandments. You could be a nice guy. A lot of nice people out there. If you don't believe in the 13 principles that the Judaism stands on, you're on the outside, not on the inside. Okay, you touch somebody's wine, we don't drink it. So, number one, we have to understand that this verse is talking about only those righteous Gentiles which are left. Only the righteous Gentiles are left will get together with the Jewish people. Exactly on what level we'll discuss. But we're talking about what brought these people into uniting with the Jewish people. It's that they saw revenge against the nations of the world. There's a the whole chapter is talking about the destruction of the nations of the world. And after who's ever left, whatever righteous people are left, after they see this, they're going to come to join in with the Jewish people, which we'll discuss at length with God's help. Okay, so let's bring down from the Talmud, from our sources. They discuss this verse, that God one day, at the end of days, He will change. He will transfer the languages of the nations to become one language, the Holy Tongue, Lashon HaKodesh, Hebrew, and the nations, or the people left, will join to worship with the Jewish people, alongside the Jewish people. Okay? So first of all, we have, this is brought down, the first time we see this brought down in the Talmud is on the tractate of Brachot, blessings, page 57, side 2. Okay, it says the following. If a Jew sees a place where idol worshipping has been uprooted, there's a certain blessing that you must say when you see such a phenomena. You see that a place of idol worshipping was uprooted. So there's a blessing that you say, and Talmud, not important exactly what the blessing is, brings down the blessing. And a person adds, just like after he says a blessing, he says just like idol worshipping has been uprooted from this place, it should be uprooted from the entire world. It should be uprooted from the entire world. So then, there is a dispute here between the Chachamim, the sages, and Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. There's a dispute here. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, he says the following, that even if a person happens to be outside the land of Israel and he sees that idol worshipping has been uprooted, besides for the blessing that he says when he sees it, he also must add the words, please Hashem, return the nations to your worshipping. Bring back the nations so they worship only you, God. You have to, according to Rabbi Shimon ben Eliezer, you have Ben Elazar, you have to add in this line. According to the Chachamim, no. You say the blessing and you do not add the words, God, may you bring back the nations of the world to worship one God. You don't say that. So what exactly is the dispute here? What exactly is the dispute here? First of all, before we get to an unbelievable passage by Rabbi Kook, let's first look into a book on the Talmud here, Brachot 57b. He brings down a book called Kemach Pesach, and he brings down a question on this Talmud. I don't understand. Did we learn in the tractate of Yivamot page 24, didn't we learn that when the Messiah comes, the Messiah will not accept any converts? Why? Because the Talmud says when times are good for the Jewish people, we do not accept converts. Why? Because it shows that the nations of the world, they're not converting because of the fact that they really believe. They're converting because they see that the Jewish people are on the up. The Jewish people are successful. And therefore they want a part of the success. You know, you ever have these friends in your school that you'd ask them, what fan are you? And for every sport, they have a different fan. So for football, because Dallas was usually always great, they always say, I'm a fan of the Dallas Cowboys. For baseball, they say, oh, we're New York Yankee fans. Oh, very interesting. I thought you're from Dallas. No, not really from Dallas. In basketball, oh yeah, we're Golden State Warrior fans. Those people, they're not emes, they're not true people. You got to go with the good, you got to go with the bad. You got to stick it out with the team. So anyways, so we know that when times are good, what kind of people are trying to cling on to the Jewish people? These people do not have good intentions. They just want to join the bandwagon. They want to reap the benefits that the Jewish people are strong and leading the world, etc. So therefore we do not accept converts in good times like King David's days and King Solomon's days, or when the Messiah comes. It's too late. You gotta be with the Jewish people when times are rough. When times are rough. So the obvious question here is, I don't understand. On one hand, we just said the Talmud in Brachot tells us that at the end of days, okay, that we say in our blessing when we see idol worshipping uprooted, we add, according to Rabbi Shimon ben Lazar, we add a sentence that Hashem should unite the nations of the world that remain. He should unite them with the Jewish people. How could that be? Because we don't accept converts from the nations of the world. So who are these people that are going to be joining us at the end of days? It's too late. So that's the question here. How could it be that it says here we should say such a blessing? Because that blessing is irrelevant. It's never going to happen, because once the Jewish people are successful, it's too late to join the club. So he says, this book, Kemach Pesach, he says here the following. He says here, he brings a few places to look. For example, in the tractate Avodah Zarah 24, side B, or if you look up in Yevamot 24, in Tosfot, he brings down the following: that it is true that in good times we do not accept converts. However, what's going to take place is either the Gentiles are going to convert themselves without asking anybody. Oh, we're Jewish. You know, like today, all of a sudden everyone's Jewish today. Very interesting. Or there will be small courts, small Jewish rabbinical courts that will accept them. But the true blue and white, the true major Jewish courts will not accept these people. So how are they going to become converts? Either, the Talmud tells us, either they will convert amongst themselves and say, we've converted and we're Jewish, or they will be accepted by smaller Jewish halachic law courts. But once again, the true courts, the leading courts of Israel will not accept them. So that's how there's a possibility at the end of days, where we're going to say that that God should bring the nations of the world to shoulder by shoulder to worship with us, the true God. This is brought down straight in the Mamlo Ez. He brings it down on the prophet Sfania 3:9. On the verse, where God will turn the world into one language and to one religion. He says, how could it be that God will bring everyone, will unite everyone? Doesn't it say that in the end of days, in the times of Messiah, we do not accept converts? So he explains, the Me'am Lo'ez, the commentator of the Me'am Lo'ez, explains, what does it mean that they will join? It doesn't mean that the Jewish people will accept them. It just means that they'll have a acceptance that the Jewish religion is correct. That's what it means. They'll be sitting back, kicking back they're not the players. They're just in the stands. They're the fans and they ain't the players. That's according to Me'am Lo'ez. Now I promised you, and I'm asking you please, we don't have insurance here, put on a seatbelt. We had a class some time ago, before the summer break. We spoke about how a certain very, very important rabbi, a very, very righteous person, unfortunately made a statement that the Jewish people are ready for redemption. We're all ready. And what's keeping back the redemption is that we are not going out to the nations of the world to teach them the 7 commandments of Noah. That's what's holding back the redemption. We had some classes on that. Listen closely to the great words of Rabbi Avraham Yitzchak Kook in his classic commentary on the same Talmud, Brachot 57:2. He explains the difference between the sages and Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Once again, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says that to add a sentence that the nations of the world should join us in worshiping one God. Why? Because the prophets say that there will come a day where God will create only one language, and they will join us to worship the one true God. According to the Chachamim, no, you do not add those words to the blessing. So he explains it beautifully. Listen to the words. Rav Kook says, on one hand, of course, that we have an idea. A Jew has an idea, and a Jew has a thought that the nations of the world should come and accept the true one God. We have an aspiration that that day should come. But listen to the words. We do not have to take part of this whatsoever. We are not a part of this. It's not part of what we have to do. Our avodat Hashem, our servicing of God. Listen to the words. Aleinu mutelet hachova rak lagdil et haTorah ve'hayirah b'kerev amenu. The only responsibility of a Jew is not to go out to the nations of the world. We have an aspiration. We have a dream that that's the way it should be. But to go out and to meet up with the nations of the world on the street corners of the world, and in order to try to convince them to observe the 7 commandments of Noah, Rav Kook says straight out, no way. What is incumbent upon the Jewish people is to learn more Torah, to do more commandments, to become more spiritual, as we've said dozens of times. The way that a Jew influences the world to become a better place is only by the fact that we keep to ourselves and we become the great nation that God has intended for us to become. That's how we influence that's how we bring up other nations or other people of nations. So that's how we do it. How? And then Rav Kook says, but if we're not active participants in bringing the word to the world, how's it going to come? So Rav Kook says, God's secrets, the way that God runs the world, how He's going to bring this to fruition, it's none of our business. Don't worry. God has His many ways. He has many, many mysterious ways how to bring this point across. He will bring the point across for some that are left in the world that will see the light. He will bring this point. But it's not incumbent upon us. Now, this is really amazing. According to the Chachamim, hold on here. According to the Chachamim, if we if the rabbis would have chosen, if the rabbis would choose to make this blessing permanent, that anytime you see the uprooting of idol worshiping, we would add in our blessing, God, may you awaken the nations of the world in order that we should all worship God together. According to the sages, if this prayer was a permanent prayer in the prayers of a Jew, this is too much of a connection. This is too much of a danger to connect us to the nations of the world, and eventually we would accept their false gods and ideas. An amazing thing. Think about that. What's the big deal here? I'm just saying a prayer, and it's okay. It's in my prayer book. And when I pull it out, when I see idol worshiping that was uprooted, okay, I pull it out, and it will say that will be the words of the prayers. Very nice. Okay, I see that. But what's the big deal? No, the sages say this is a big deal. This is a big deal because the fact that you're praying for this, you're making a connection between you and the nations of the world. And that connection, even through prayer, is a danger for the spirituality of a Jew. Unbelievable. According to the second opinion, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar, he says no. He says that if it just remains a prayer in the prayer book of a Jew, and a Jew, when he sees the uprooting of idolatry, when he sees that and he says that God, may you change the world to be a one nation under God, one God. If we add that in, this is not going to lead us to have relations with the non-Jews, and it's not going to connect us and have us accept many of their false ideas. There is no danger, according to Rabbi Shimon Zah. But this is an amazing thing. This is an amazing thing. So, anyways, we see here, once again, that what the Talmud is talking about, we explain number one, we see that this is after the nations of the world received tremendous revenge, punishment for thousands of years of torturing the Jewish people. So these are only the survivors here. And even amongst those survivors, they will not be accepted. Most of them will not be accepted. Why? Because during the good times, we do not accept converts. So these are people that are either going to convert amongst themselves or will be accepted by small types of courts. Today, for example, you have many rabbis, unfortunately, that convert all kinds of people, even though to our eye it seems like very clear to us that they have no connection. What's the connection between them and Judaism? It looks like absolutely nothing. So even today, you have Orthodox, so-called Orthodox rabbis that are converting a lot of Gentiles, and they're really not converts. So that's just going to keep on happening in the end of days, which is really amazing. That's going to keep on happening. Okay, now, the next source we have, which this verse is brought down, is there is a dispute in the tractate Avodah Zarah, page 24, side 1. There's a dispute whether the Jewish people are allowed to accept animals to sacrifice in the temple. Let's say a Gentile wants to bring a sacrifice or animals for Jewish people to sacrifice to God in the Temple Mount. Are you allowed to accept? So Rabbi Eliezer, again in the previous dispute, it wasn't Rabbi Eliezer, it was Rabbi Elazar. This is Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer says, as a thumb of rule, we do not accept a animal from the nations of the world. Why? Because they are suspects on having relations with animals. And one of the conditions of bringing an animal to sacrifice at the temple is that it has to have no relations unfortunately, it should sound like kind of like whoa, but unfortunately today, anybody that sees, looks occasionally at the news, there are many, this is an increasing phenomena. I just in the last 2 days, somebody sent me similar stories about people having relations with various animals. So unfortunately, this is a growing trend in our times. Anyways, so according to Rabbi Eliezer, as a general principle, we do not receive. However, the rabbis asked Rabbi Eliezer, we know that the prophet Sphania in chapter 3, verse 9, he says that the day will come when the nations of the world will join forces with the Jewish people and worship one God. So, in the end of days, could we accept a animal to use as a sacrifice at the temple? Because they will change their ways. And Rabbi Eliezer says, no, you don't understand. That verse in Sphania, it's not that they will join, it's not that they're going to really join forces with the Jewish people. What's going to be is that they will either convert themselves or they will be accepted as converts by small Jewish courts. So once again, we have the same principle here. We see constantly that at the end of days, it's too late. If you haven't joined the Jewish people through thick and thin, so you're not in, you're on the outside. And so how is the world going to turn and say, oh, we're worshiping with the Jewish people? Because they themselves will convert themselves. They didn't ask anybody, or they went to small Jewish courts that somehow accepted them. But the big courts, they did not accept them. They did not accept them. This is also written by one of the major commentators. It's called the Marsha. It says in the verse that they will worship with the Jewish people shoulder by shoulder. What does this mean, shoulder by shoulder? The Marsha says an unbelievable Torah. He says the following: Shchem echad, shoulder to shoulder, it also means apart. So he says the following: we know that at the end of days we will not receive Gentiles as converts. So what exactly are they going to be observing? What commandments are they going to observe? So the answer is that, of course, we will not receive converts. So they are not going to be equal to the Jewish people. However, there will be certain principles that they will accept. That's what the verse means. It doesn't mean that they're going to be shoulder to shoulder really with us, 100%. They're on the same level. No, they're not on the same level. And they're not converts. However, they will accept upon themselves a certain portion of the truth. And one of those portions of the truth will be that not to have relations with animals. So therefore, in the end of days, those Gentiles that are remaining, even though they're not converts and they're not equal and they're not really shoulder to shoulder, however, they've at least take one step up and they do not do that transgression, which is one of the 7 commandments, one of the 7 prohibitions of Noah. The last idea here for this week is the famous Natsif, Naftali Tzvi Yuda of Berlin. He's a tremendous commentator on the Talmud and also, of course, in the Bible, Tanakh. He says the following. He is explaining Rabbi Eliezer's words that in the end of days, okay, everyone's going to shoulder to shoulder worship with the Jewish people. But how could that be? Because we don't accept converts at that time. So Rabbi Eliezer says that exactly, we don't accept converts, but they'll convert themselves or they'll be accepted by small Jewish courts. And why don't we accept them? So the Netziv commentator says the following: because their intent is not for the sake of heaven that they're converting, because they see that the Jewish people are now being honored. They see that the honor is returned to the Jewish people, to the land of Israel, and therefore in order to receive the benefits with the Jewish people, that's why they're willing to join us. And therefore, in the days of Solomon and the days of David, they were not accepted. They converted on their own, or they were accepted by smaller courts. But the big court, the major Jewish court, did not receive these people, did not accept them. And listen to what he says. Even though there is a verse in the prophets, now we know that different parts of the Torah have different weight to them. And if there's a verse, okay, if there's a verse in the Torah, if there's a verse in the Torah, or a verse in the earlier prophets, this has a different weight to it. So he brings down the following. He says, what are we going to do with this verse? That at the end of days, they're going to join us. It seems like there will be converts. He says, no. There is a decree, and there's no way out. There is a decree that we do not accept non-Jews at the end of days, period. And he brings down a verse of Isaiah 54:15, which says it very clearly, that only in the times that the Jewish people were struggling. We see this by giants. For example, the mother of the Messiah was Ruth. Ruth was a person, she barely had any food left. She was on the floor looking for something to eat. And Naomi, these are tremendous converts. And why were they converts? Because the Torah teaches us that because they suffered with the Jewish people, these are examples of true converts, not the circus that we see today, where people are joining for all kinds of monetary. Those that came from Russia, they wanted you get money for coming here as a Jew, and so they wanted financial benefits, etc. Okay, so these are the true samples of converts are Naomi. She came from Ammon, and Ruth from Moab. Naomi and Ken also. Excuse me. Naamah. My mistake. Okay, good you point that out. Naamah, Ammonite. Okay, that was married to King Solomon. Those are examples of not Naomi. Yafeh. Okay, so with God's help, we just have a little further next week. So once again, today was really part 2, but we're going to call it 3 and 4. Till next week, Shalom Aleichem.
I won't touch it. I'll take no chances. You can shut. I don't even, Yehuda's